Good morning and good evening to everyone who has joined us from all across the world. Thank you for joining and welcome to this Designers Life Plus Detox session. Detox is a community initiative by designers. One of the main reasons why we started with Detox was to ensure that all the members of a community get real industry exposure and learn directly from the designers who are working in the industry so that they become industry ready. So today we have Louis with us, who is a design advocate at Figma, and he has surely had an interesting journey till now, and he will give his own insights from his journey. So, without any further time, I would hand it over to Louis.
I've lined up a bunch of questions from the Q&A. So before you all joined, I think there was an opportunity to ask some questions, and I've selected 10 of those questions to try and answer for you now. So, first question. Do you think external factors like networking, social skills, persona charm are as important as an impeccable portfolio when applying for jobs or projects? I would like to say no. However, if you remember at the start of my talk, I mentioned that I have these projects. And I also mentioned that without these projects, I would not be sitting here today. So the cold, hard reality is that I do believe you need to be showing that you are unique, you have special skills that you are bringing to the table when you are applying for a job. And the bottom line is that you can very quickly create design portfolios. You can create work, you can do projects, you can do freelance work. But when you're sending your application into a job, somebody will see this work, but they won't see you as the person behind it. And it's so important to show your personality, to show who you are and why you're unique culturally to that individual job and that position. The design work that you're going to be doing in that job is going to be minor compared to the interactions that you have with your team, the cultural aspects of the company, and how you build that team bonding going forward. So my advice is to show yourself, be yourself in your applications, prove that you have distinct qualities. Do you like to play soccer? Add that to your CV. Do you like to cook? Add that to your CV. It will just make people feel you a lot better, particularly now when you can't have in-person interviews. Next question. What things one should keep in mind when switching from graphic design to UI UX? Fundamentally, they're very similar. You're ultimately going to be solving problems. Design is about solving problems. It's not about being artistic. And when you're being a graphic designer, you're probably experiencing or have experienced very similar things that you will do as a UI, UX, product designer, web designer, whatever you want to call it. You're going to be in a situation where you get a brief. You need to solve that brief with your team in a collaborative way, using tools. All of these things, it doesn't matter what the job title is, you're going to be doing the same things. Obviously, as a graphic designer, you may have more artistic flair, but you can still do that within these disciplines. People are seeing strides made with regards to illustration and really cool branding within their UI and UX product design work. So there's no reason why you can't make that transition. Next question. Do we need to create portfolios in different mediums as well, like a website, then a presentation deck, and both should consist of different projects? This comes up a lot, this question, and I think that everybody is confused about what to do. My best piece of advice would be to have somewhere where you live online. Maybe that is just a very simple landing page on your luisouriach.com, or maybe it's on a Medium profile, or maybe it's an about.me page, but just somewhere where you can direct people to. Have yourself on there. It just says, hey, I'm a designer, I'm doing this thing. And then for your case studies work, I wouldn't encourage you to spend all your time writing case studies for an online persona and a PDF and a blog somewhere else. Keep them in one place. And the best place for that really is a PDF. When you're applying for jobs, you can just send one PDF and people will know where to find your work, where the descriptions are, and where the cohesive description of your previous history is. If you try and split things up between a Behance, a Dribbble, a PDF, a website, you're going to confuse the person that's hiring you. And having been in that position before, where people do try and split me up and send me to other places, I know that those applications have failed. So my advice to you is to have one place where you live online and you can direct people to, and then one PDF portfolio where you can send to people. Next question. Should I include self-initiated projects in my portfolio or only client work? I, even up until my last job, was including self-initiated projects in my work. As I mentioned just 2 questions ago, these other projects that I do in my spare time have encouraged my application. And I understand that a lot of you are just starting out in the industry. So you're probably the only option you do have is self-initiated projects, which means that you're going to have to include them. When I first did my first applications, even up to my second, third job, I was including work that wasn't necessarily from my career. It was individual freelance projects. It was briefs that I found online that I wanted to have a go at. I would definitely encourage you to do as much extracurricular work as possible, just so you can become more comfortable within the tools, more comfortable within your design style. And when you get to a point where you're proud of something you're producing, include it in your portfolio. All you need to do is just make it very clear this wasn't part of a job, it was self-initiated, but just be also very clear about what you learned. What were your learnings from that project? Why did you do it? Would you do it again? What would you do differently? All these sorts of questions that you can include to make your portfolio just a bit more sophisticated, a bit more interesting. Next question. As I'm a graphic designer, is it worth showcasing my designs in my UX portfolio? As I mentioned before, graphic design has very similar issues that UX or UI product design has, in that you're solving problems for people with a brief using tools. So although your graphic design work may not be completely appropriate to the UX jobs that you're applying for, I would still try to encourage you to be able to talk about the process that you went through to come up with the solutions. And maybe it is, here's a poster I designed, but you can talk about the research you did, what influences you had, who you worked with, what tools you used, all the questions that you had and how you overcame those. Those sorts of things are going to enable you to be really successful within your applications, because it's about the process that you went through to come to the end, not necessarily just the end product. Next question. What are some do's and don'ts when it comes to designing UX portfolios? Do's, I would say, are include the who, what, why, when, how, and don'ts, I would say, don't make it too long. When you're applying for jobs, you're going to be applying for them amongst loads of other people. And the hiring manager only has a certain amount of time to be able to skim through your work. So if you include something that's 10,000 words long, they're not going to read it. It's just not going to happen, unfortunately. So what you need to be able to do is write very concisely and skim over the points that enable them to see that this person has done some significant work that is very important. Which is why I break it down into the who, what, why, when, and how. If you can have those headlines or categories within your portfolio, you can direct people through the journey very quickly. They can skim through it, they can see in particular points that are interesting, and also other stuff that they don't necessarily need to read now. They can see the screenshots in situ as well. And then sort of on top of that one is to use bullet points. I know we're all very encouraged and keen to write in really lengthy, articulate paragraphs, but as I said, people just don't have the time to read it. So make use of bullet points and try and be as concise as you can when you're writing, because it will enable you to get through that pipeline a lot quicker. There's a lot of material online and so many softwares for prototyping and interface. I would like to know which software companies require, and if there is any theory to learn, or is it okay to just jump right into making a prototype? There is not any one tool that you should be learning to use. The best advice for this one is to use the tool that is appropriate for that job. I will obviously promote Figma in this instance, but I wouldn't be offended if you use something else. And what it might be worth doing is collating all these job applications that you're looking at, seeing what tools they're listing on the job applications, and trying to be proactive to learn what they require from their end. Every company does things very differently. So learning a particular tool set for one job may not work in another one. And that's where you want to be really structured with your time and your energy to make sure that you're being really intentful about how you're going to come across these problems, how you're going to solve them. With regards to jumping in and learning, with regards to learning it or jumping straight in, there's no harm in jumping in. The only thing you'll probably come up against is that you'll get stuck and think, wait, what can I do? What am I supposed to be doing here? I'm a bit unsure about what I can be doing, which is where briefs come in. Go and find an online brief from a website or even a client site or something, and try and replicate what they're asking for using a tool. The only way you're going to become better with a tool is by doing real work within it rather than doing mess around work by yourself. So try and find a real brief and try and tackle it yourself and using the prototyping tool. That's where you're allowed to see. That's what will allow you to get to the next level with regards to your progression. Next one. I'm a front-end developer I want to make a switch into product designing. Is it a good decision? How should I approach to start a career in UX? Of course, it's not necessarily a bad or a good decision. It's entirely up to you. And if you feel like your passion is waning with regards to front-end development, and you feel like you want to be more creative, jump in, go for it. The thing that you might want to consider in this point is that why can't you do a little bit of both? Why can't you be a creative front-end developer? My perspective with regards to the future of front-end development and future of design is they're going to be merging, and people will be using code and design at the same time to create interfaces. And somebody who has skills like front-end development, but also an interest in design and product process, can be really powerful going forward. So I'd recommend you don't just abandon your development work, but try and complement it with work that you can do with a user experience or user interface work. And I'd encourage you to look up somebody called Steve Shoga in this instance, and he's somebody who's building some really great stuff with regards to Tailwind CSS, and they're approaching design in a code and design way, which might be really useful to you. So this one I think is quite similar to the previous one. Is it preferable to have two portfolios? One that gets you to the interview, showing the fancy screens and some copy, and another one to convince you once you got the interview, which shows the full copy and design process. As I mentioned before, my best piece of advice here is to have one PDF portfolio that's your case studies. This is the work you do. But you're absolutely right in that you need to tease people in. And maybe you have something on your website, maybe you have so if you have your website over here, or you have your Behance portfolio, something like that, you have very short snippets of what that work is. And then the conversation then becomes, hey, here's a 100-word summary of my project, but the full piece of work is in my PDF portfolio, which you can download from here. That's the best way to get around it. Alternatively, we need to realize as designers that people don't necessarily just go into our website to browse our design work. It's only ever going to be important if we're applying for a job or trying to get some freelance work, in which case your full PDF portfolio should probably be enough in this instance. This one's a big one. What's the future of design? My opinion, as I sort of touched on earlier, is that design and development are going to be merging into one practice. And I think that people are going to be able to get so much more creative with tools to close the gap between design and development. That doesn't mean that you need to go and learn to code. My perspective here is that no code tools are going to become more popular, and it's going to enable people like us who aren't necessarily great coders to create projects that are real, that are data driven, from the comfort of our own design tool that we can test and we can push out and use on our mobiles and use in our browsers. And the landscape of engineering, design, product is going to be slowly but surely merging into one, and we're going to be enabled as creative professionals to drive this forward. And I think that ultimately the future of our careers is kind of in our hands, and you have the power through side projects, through briefs, through networking, through the community, to take control of your career and drive it forward as much as you wish. Go and create a Twitter profile, go and follow people, communicate with people in the community, go and create files that you share for free in other places, go and do dummy briefs that you find because it's interesting and it's exciting, it allows you to learn things. Without this passion and drive to be sort of living design as a process, you're gonna fall behind. So you have the power to grab it, go and learn it, engage with the community, and produce projects that you can send out yourself and feel really proud of. When you enter an interview and you say, hey, look, here's a free thing that I built, here's a button library or a color library or something like that, they're going to be so much more impressed than if you say, hey, I was working somewhere for 2 years and I didn't really learn too much. If you go out of your way to show that you are the professional that they want to hire, you're going to be in a much better place than somebody who doesn't do that. So go out there and push yourself and engage in the community and make all that free work that enables you to build a better brand, a better personal brand to drive your career forward. Thank you very much.
I hope that the session was really great, guys. Thanks a lot, Luis. It was really great to have this session. Thanks a lot. If there are any more questions, you can contact us on our email IDs and our phone number that is being displayed on your screen. I hope that you enjoyed this detox session. And if you have any other suggestions, do mail us or contact us. And I'll see you in the next one.